Everyone knows the official story. Apollo 11 lands, Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong step onto the moon. History is made. But what if the real secrets are not about a staged landing? What if Aldrin has spent decades hinting at threats, anomalies, and hidden health risks NASA never wanted on the record? An L-shaped object stalking the crew, cryptic flight rules including instructions not to report unidentified phenomena openly, the choking stench of lunar dust burning like gunpowder, and medical data lost forever. Buzz Aldrin has clashed with skeptics and protected the badge of truth. His late-life warning suggests the dirtiest secrets stayed locked in silence. The evidence is out there. The cover-up is not what you think, and it starts with a punch heard round the world. The sound of Bart Sebrill's voice cuts through the air, demanding, insistent. He says, "Swear on the Bible you walked on the moon." Buzz Aldrin, 72 years old, stands toe-to-toe with the conspiracy theorist in a sunlit hotel parking lot. Sebrill blocks his path, camera rolling, crowd gathering. Then, with a single explosive motion, Aldrin's fist connects with Sebrill's jaw. The moment is raw, unscripted, captured forever in viral footage that ricocheted across every news outlet in 2002. No charges were filed. The Los Angeles police called it self-defense. The public called it legendary. For some, Aldrin became a folk hero, NASA's bulldog, defending the honor of Apollo with his own hands. For others, the punch was a crack in the astronaut's polished armor, a flash of something deeper, anger, fatigue, maybe even guilt. Headlines blared, "Moon Man snaps." Late-night hosts joked about the punch heard round the world. But buried beneath the spectacle was a question that refused to die. Why did a man celebrated for his composure and discipline lose control in that moment? Aldrin's life since Apollo 11 has been a study in duality. The official record shows a decorated pilot, a doctor of science, a man who faced the void and brought back only facts. But the other Buzz, the one who snaps, who bristles at skeptics, who sometimes lets his guard slip, hints at a burden that goes beyond the need to defend a legacy. If the moon landing really happened and Aldrin is the living proof, why does the truth still seem so fragile? What exactly is he protecting? And what, if anything, is he hiding? Every claim in this investigation will be tagged, tracked, and held to account. When a detail is drawn directly from NASA's own transcripts, a badge, archival, will flash on screen. When a statement comes from an expert or from Aldrin himself in a public interview, it will be marked as expert. And when a theory or speculation is presented, no matter how tantalizing, it will be labeled speculation. Clear and unmistakable. The rule is simple. No more than 10 seconds pass before a badge appears for any claim that is not common knowledge. Behind the scenes, every quote, every anomaly, every contradiction is logged in a master spreadsheet with time codes, sources, clearance status, all cross-referenced. This is not just for show. It is a promise. Every assertion can be traced back to its origin, whether it is a NASA air-to-ground voice loop, a post-mission debrief, or a late-night interview where Aldrin lets something slip. This protocol is not standard fare for a documentary. It is a defensive posture, an admission that the lines between fact, filtered fact, and fevered speculation are razor-thin in the Apollo story. The badge system is the only way to keep the signal clear from the noise. If a claim is unverifiable, it gets called out. If a source is suspect, it is flagged. If something is missing, like the vanished Apollo 11 telemetry tapes, it is noted, not buried. From here on, every anomaly, every secret, every point of doubt will be judged by these standards. The dossier is open. The evidence rules are set. The next chapter begins. Mission audio crackles, an artifact of 1969 analog, but the voices are unmistakable. At precisely mission, elapsed time 037:58. Buzz Aldrin's tone is clipped, clinical, but there is a catch in the rhythm. He says, "We have something out there." L-shaped, two objects going by the spacecraft, about 8 or 10 nautical miles away. No theory, no speculation, just a statement, logged forever in the NASA transcript. The clock on the mission timer reads 38 hours, 2 minutes. The sighting fades. Armstrong's voice joins, steady as ever, querying ground control. Houston replies, "Copy. Confirmed separation. No threat." The official record moves on, but the words hang in the static, unresolved. The badge flashes, archival. This is not a rumor, not a fringe claim. It is the raw feed from Apollo 11, preserved in the flight journal and replayed in countless documentaries. Aldrin's phrasing is deliberate. He never says UFO, never speculates. But he does not dismiss the geometry, L-shaped, metallic, pacing us. In later interviews, Aldrin returns to the moment with the same precision. He says, "It was either the rocket we had separated from, or the 4 panels that moved away." He insists on the prosaic, but the choice of words, always geometric, always ambiguous, keeps the question alive. Why did the crew switch to coded language or shift to private loops when the unknown appeared? NASA's own rules required discipline. Anomalies were to be reported, not theorized, and never speculated about on open channels. A silent pause follows the transcript. The object is gone. The record resumes its march to the moon. But the anomaly remains, locked in the official log, immune to retroactive editing. This is the evidence, neither debunked nor confirmed, just filed, time-stamped, and archived. The first dirty secret is not what Aldrin claims later, but what he said and did not say when the world was listening. Flight Rule F, R 12.3. Buried in the Apollo Operations Handbook, it reads like a line from a Cold War playbook. Crew will report any anomalous visual phenomena over private communication loops. Public channels reserved for mission-critical dialogue only. The language is antiseptic. No mention of unidentified flying objects. No hint of cover-up. Just a directive stamped with the authority of mission safety and operational security. Controllers in Houston, men like Gene Kranz and Steve Bales, enforced this discipline without fanfare. If an astronaut glimpsed something out the window that could not be explained in the moment, a flash, a geometric shadow, or a metallic glint, the protocol was simple. Switch to the private loop, log the sighting. Keep chatter off the main air to ground feed, where every syllable was piped directly to the world's living rooms and Soviet listening posts. On paper, the justification was airtight. The moon race was a theater of global surveillance. Every word from Apollo could be twisted, weaponized, or misinterpreted by adversaries and the press. The rule protected the mission from panic, rumor, and the kind of speculation that could derail funding or spark diplomatic chaos. Safety and secrecy, inseparable. But the effect was more than bureaucratic. When Aldrin and Armstrong spotted that L-shaped object, the decision to route their questions through private channels meant that context vanished from the public record. The official logs show only the sanitized version. Confirmed separation, no threat. The raw uncertainty, the moment when even the best trained eyes in history did not know what they were seeing, was filtered out. A retired flight controller, speaking decades later, described the private loops as the shadow archive. Not erased, not lost, but cordoned off from the story NASA wanted to tell. The result? Every time the record skips, every time a gap appears in the transcript, the question lingers. What else was witnessed, and who decided what the world was allowed to hear? Inside the lunar module, the hatch seals. The world outside is silent, airless. But within minutes, a new threat creeps in, one no simulation ever prepared them for. Aldrin and Armstrong peel off their dust-caked boots, lunar regolith clinging to every seam. The dust is everywhere, in the air, on their suits, in their lungs. Then the smell hits, a sharp metallic tang, unmistakable and alien. Aldrin calls it out first. "It smells like spent gunpowder in here," he says, voice tight, as if the words themselves could trigger an alarm. Armstrong agrees. The odor hangs thick, not fading, not dissipating, coating the back of the throat. The logs from that night confirm it. The smell lingered for nearly 4 hours, outlasting any reasonable explanation. The symptoms follow fast. Eyes water, noses run. Both men start sneezing, coughing, their voices slipping from the clipped cadence of test pilots to something rawer, more human. The official debrief calls it lunar hay fever. The phrase is almost comic, but the reality is not. Aldrin's breathing grows ragged. Armstrong's eyes redden. The medical log, stamped archival, records it as a minor irritation. But the cabin audio tells a different story. 2 men sealed in a metal box, slowly realizing that the prize they brought back from the moon might be toxic. NASA's later explanation is clinical. The lunar dust, exposed to oxygen for the first time, reacts violently. Nanophase iron and sulfur compounds, invisible and abrasive, turning the air inside the module into something chemical, sharp, and dangerous. No biological hazard, the scientists say, just chemistry. But the astronauts' bodies do not care about theory. Aldrin would later recall the sensation as both fascinating and alarming. An unfiltered moment when the moon itself seemed to reach back, leaving its mark not in footprints, but in the lungs and senses of the men who walked it. The official story moves on. The smell fades. The dust is swept, filtered, logged as a footnote. But for hours, the most hostile thing on the moon was not the vacuum outside. It was what Aldrin and Armstrong brought in with them, an invisible stowaway that refused to be forgotten. Lunar dust, regolith in the language of NASA, was never just dirt. The moment oxygen flooded the lunar module, that gray powder turned into something else entirely. Scientists back on Earth would later dissect the samples. But for Aldrin and Armstrong, the evidence was already in their lungs and on their skin. The smell was gunpowder, sharp and metallic. And it was not just a curiosity. It was chemistry in real time, an alien reaction unfolding in a sealed can of air 200,000 miles from home. Dr. Jennifer Heldman, a geochemist at NASA Ames, once described lunar dust as electrostatically charged, sticking to everything, reacting violently with oxygen. In the lab, researchers tried to recreate the Apollo experience. They found that when simulated lunar dust like LPIJSC-1A meets oxygen, it releases heat, sulfur compounds, and a cocktail of metallic odors. The culprit is nanophase iron, forged by billions of years of micrometeorite impacts and solar wind. On the moon, this iron is inert, locked in a vacuum. But inside the module, with a surge of fresh air, it oxidizes in seconds. The result is an invisible haze, laced with particles so fine they cut into skin, lungs, and machinery alike. Tests run in vacuum chambers on Earth measured the abrasiveness index of lunar simulant, and it was sharper than glass, almost as aggressive as industrial sandblasting grit. Astronaut gloves and visors wore down in hours, not days. The biomedical logs from Apollo 11, summarized and never released in full, showed elevated heart rates and respiratory stress during dust exposure. The original telemetry tapes, the ones that might have held high-fidelity data on these reactions, are gone. Overwritten and lost to budget cuts and bureaucratic neglect, the official line is simple. Lunar dust is a geological hazard, not a biological one. But the symptoms, sneezing, burning eyes, raw throats, tell a different story. For Aldrin, the memory of that smell, the sting in his nose, became a warning. The moon's most dangerous secret was not out there in the void. It was what followed them home, invisible, uncontained, and still not fully understood. The core of Apollo's dirty secrets isn't a blurry photo or a whispered confession. It's a hole, an absence where the most important evidence should be. In the years after the moon landing, NASA's tape vaults filled with reels, thousands of hours of telemetry, biomedical feeds, and the original slow-scan television signal, sharper than anything ever broadcast. But when researchers went hunting for the raw Apollo 11 data, they found only a void. The original slow-scan television tapes, about 1,400 reels, had vanished. Not stolen, not locked away, but overwritten, erased by Policy MS 05.6, a cost-cutting order that treated priceless history as expendable stock. The official explanation was that the agency was running out of magnetic tape in the late 1970s and early 1980s. Old missions were cannibalized to make room for new data. Tape inventory charts show the numbers. Hundreds of thousands of reels cycled, recycled, lost to bureaucratic churn. The Apollo 11 telemetry tapes, which held not just the iconic video, but also high-fidelity biomedical data, heart rates, stress levels, every physiological spike and dip as Aldrin and Armstrong faced the unknown, are gone. What remains are summaries, printouts, degraded broadcast copies. The sharpest window into the crew's real-time reactions has been reduced to static. Richard Nafzger, NASA's senior tape archivist, sits at a battered desk, flipping through old inventory sheets. His voice is flat, and he says we erased them because we ran out of tapes. We didn't realize what we were losing. For Aldrin, the loss isn't just technical, it's personal. The only unfiltered record of what happened inside the lunar module, the raw, unedited stream of body and mind under lunar stress, is missing. When the data disappears, so does the chance to answer the deepest questions about what the moon really did to the men who walked on it. The gap isn't just in the archives, it's in the story itself. A Twitter account springs to life on November 28, 2016. Buzz Aldrin, age 86, bundled in polar gear, grins at the bottom of the world. The tweets are upbeat. Photos from Union Glacier, a note about the cold, a nod to the adventure. Then, within hours, the tone fractures. Aldrin is airlifted out of Antarctica, diagnosed with fluid in his lungs, rushed from the ice to a New Zealand hospital. The official story is altitude sickness, but the timeline leaves gaps. The tweets vanish, replaced by statements from his son and his manager. No in danger message survives in the archives. Yet the rumor spreads. Aldrin saw something, said too much, and was silenced. The facts are clinical. Medical reports confirm pulmonary edema, not conspiracy. But the erasure, the missing tweets, the sudden blackout, feeds a different kind of speculation. Why did an octogenarian astronaut risk the South Pole at all? What did he hope to find or prove at the far end of the Earth? Aldrin's next public appearance brings another riddle. In a C-SPAN interview, he leans forward, eyes sharp, and says there is a monolith on Phobos, one of the moons of Mars. He says NASA should go there. The monolith is real, an 85-meter boulder photographed by Mars Global Surveyor. But Aldrin's phrasing is deliberate, as if inviting listeners to read between the lines. Why mention it at all? Why now? Patterns form in the static. Sudden medical emergencies. Cryptic remarks about structures in the void. A man who has walked on the moon, hinting at secrets that refuse to stay buried. Decades later, the moon's silence still echoes with unfinished business. The lost telemetry tapes, the toxic dust, Aldrin's guarded warnings, all remain unresolved, archived behind layers of bureaucracy and secrecy. As NASA prepares to return to the lunar surface, we face the same question. What will we be allowed to see, and what will be buried again? The shadows on the moon aren't going anywhere. Drop your thoughts in the comments below.